My brother looked at me across the lawyer's office and said, "Mom always loved me more anyway. That's why she's leaving me the house." I was caring for our dying mother while he showed up once a month. When she passed, I discovered he'd forged a new will. 4 years later, I proved it in court, and he lost everything. My name is Daniel Hayes. I'm 34 years old, and this is the story of how my older brother manipulated our dying mother, forged legal documents to steal my inheritance, and thought he'd gotten away with it because I was too heartbroken to fight back. He was wrong. If you've ever sacrificed everything to care for a sick parent, only to be betrayed by a sibling, if you've ever watched someone steal what was rightfully yours, smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, and buckle up, because this revenge was years in the making. Let's get into it. To understand how my brother could do something so cruel, you need to understand our family. Or more accurately, you need to understand how broken we were long before our mother got sick. My name is Daniel Hayes. I'm 34 years old, living in a small town called Riverside Springs, about an hour outside of Boston, Massachusetts. I'm the younger of two brothers, and for as long as I can remember, I was the one who never quite measured up. My older brother, Marcus, was always the golden child. 3 years older than me, he was the firstborn son, the one who carried our father's name as his middle name, the one who could do no wrong in our parents' eyes. Marcus was athletic, popular in school, charismatic in that effortless way some people are. He played varsity football, dated the homecoming queen, got into a decent state college on a partial athletic scholarship. He was everything our father wanted in a son. I was different, quieter, more introspective. I loved reading, spent hours in the library, preferred chess club to football practice. I wasn't unpopular, just different. And in our family, different meant lesser. My father, Robert Hayes, was an old-school construction foreman who believed men should be tough, athletic, and uncomplicated. He looked at me like I was a puzzle he couldn't solve. My mother, Catherine, tried to bridge the gap, but even she had a special softness in her voice when she talked about Marcus that I never quite heard when she talked about me. Our father died when I was 19, heart attack on a construction site. He was only 52. It was sudden and devastating, and it left our mother a widow at 49, with a paid-off house, a decent life insurance policy, and 2 sons who were supposed to take care of her as she aged. Marcus was 22 at the time, had just graduated college, and was working in sales for a medical equipment company. I was in my second year at community college, studying accounting, living at home to save money. After Dad died, something shifted in our family dynamic. Mom leaned on Marcus more. He was the man of the family now, at least in her mind. He'd come over for Sunday dinners, fix things around her house, handle the important decisions. I was still there, still living at home, actually, but I was background noise, the dependable one who paid rent and helped with groceries, but not the one she called when something important needed deciding. Marcus moved an hour away to take a better job in Boston when I was 21. He got married to a woman named Vanessa when he was 26. They had a big wedding that Mom helped pay for, even though I knew she couldn't really afford it. They bought a house in the suburbs, had 2 kids by the time Marcus was 30. The perfect family. Meanwhile, I'd finished my accounting degree, gotten a job at a small firm in Riverside Springs, and stayed close to Mom, not because I had to, but because I wanted to, because I loved her, even if she'd never loved me quite the same way she loved Marcus. For years, this was our pattern. I'd see Mom 3-4 times a week. We'd have dinner together, watch her favorite TV shows, talk about our days. Marcus would visit once a month, maybe twice if we were lucky, usually for a Sunday afternoon. He'd blow in with his perfect wife and perfect kids, dominate the conversation for a few hours, then leave. And Mom would spend the rest of the week talking about how wonderful it was to see him, how well he was doing, how proud she was. It stung, I won't lie about that. I was the one who was actually there, day after day, year after year. But I told myself it didn't matter, that being there for Mom was its own reward. I believed that, right up until the day everything fell apart. Mom was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer when she was 67 years old. I was 30 at the time. Marcus was 33. The diagnosis came out of nowhere. She'd been having some stomach pain, some weight loss, but we'd attributed it to stress and aging. By the time the doctors found the cancer, it had already spread to her liver and lymph nodes. 6 to 1 year, the oncologist said. We can try chemotherapy to extend that timeline and manage symptoms, but this isn't something we can cure. I was sitting next to Mom in that sterile office when we got the news, holding her hand as she cried. Marcus wasn't there. He'd been too busy to come to the appointment, said he'd catch up with us later. When I called to tell him the diagnosis, he went quiet for a long moment, then said, "Jesus, okay. I'll come down this weekend. We need to talk about what happens next." What happens next? Like she was already dead and we needed to divide up her belongings. That weekend, Marcus showed up with Vanessa. They sat in Mom's living room while I made coffee, and Marcus immediately started talking about practical matters. We need to make sure all your affairs are in order, Mom. Your will, your financial accounts, power of attorney. We should get everything documented properly. Mom nodded weakly. She'd started chemotherapy 2 days earlier and was already exhausted from it. I have a will, she said. Your father and I made one years ago. Everything's split evenly between you boys. That old will? Marcus shook his head. Mom, that was written when Dad was still alive. A lot has changed. You need to update it. Make sure it reflects your current wishes. What would I change? Mom asked. You're both my sons. I want you both to have equal shares. Marcus glanced at Vanessa, then back at Mom. Well, there are other considerations now. Estate taxes, for one thing, and you need to think about who's going to handle your affairs if you become incapacitated. Who has power of attorney? Who's the executor of the estate? These are big responsibilities, Mom. You need someone who understands these things at a higher level. I'm an accountant, I said flatly. I think I can understand estate planning. You work at a small-town accounting firm doing taxes for local businesses, Marcus said with a dismissive wave. I'm talking about complex estate management, healthcare directives, financial planning. This requires someone who understands these things at a higher level.
The implication was clear. He was more capable, more important, more deserving of Mom's trust. I wanted to argue, but Mom spoke up first. Boys, please, I don't want you fighting. Marcus, Daniel's right. My will is fine as it is. Everything will be split equally, and Daniel can be the executor. He's here, he knows my wishes, and I trust him. I saw something flash across Marcus's face. Anger, maybe, or frustration, but he covered it quickly with a smile. Of course, Mom, whatever you want. I just want to make sure you're taken care of. But he didn't let it go. Over the next few weeks, he kept bringing it up. Every time he visited, which suddenly became more frequent, he'd mention the will, the estate planning, how important it was to have everything properly organized. He brought over brochures from estate planning attorneys. He talked about tax strategies and trust funds. He made it sound like he was being helpful, being responsible. But I could see what he was really doing. He was positioning himself. Mom's health deteriorated quickly. The chemotherapy made her violently ill. She lost 40 pounds in 2 months. She couldn't work anymore, had to retire early from her job as a school secretary. I took family leave from work to care for her. I moved back into my childhood home so I could be there around the clock. I managed her medications, drove her to appointments, helped her bathe when she was too weak to do it herself, held her hair back when she vomited from the chemo. Marcus visited every other weekend, 2 hours on a Saturday or Sunday afternoon. He'd sit with Mom, tell her stories about his kids, about his job, about his life. He'd make her laugh, which I appreciated because those moments of joy were rare. But then he'd leave, and I'd be the one dealing with the hard parts, the pain, the fear, the slow, terrible decline. 4 months into her diagnosis, Mom's oncologist told us the chemotherapy wasn't working. The cancer was progressing despite treatment. We can continue the chemo if you want to try other protocols, he said. But honestly, at this point, we're talking about quality of life versus quantity. The treatments are making her very sick. She might have more good days if we stop and focus on palliative care. Mom decided to stop the chemotherapy. I'm so tired, she told me that night, crying in her bedroom. I'm tired of being sick, tired of fighting. I just want to feel like myself for whatever time I have left. Then that's what we'll do, I said, holding her. We'll make you comfortable. We'll make the most of the time we have. I called Marcus to tell him. She's stopping treatment? He asked. Is that a good idea? Maybe we should get a second opinion. Try a different hospital. Marcus, she's exhausted. She's suffering. This is her decision. I just think we should explore all options before we give up. We're not giving up, I interrupted. We're respecting her wishes. If you want to be part of this, then be here. Actually be here. Not just for an afternoon every other week. Be here for the hard parts. He was quiet for a moment. I have a family, Daniel. I have responsibilities. I can't just drop everything. Neither could I, but I did it anyway, because she's our mother. Don't you dare act like you're the only one who cares about her, Marcus snapped. I'm doing the best I can. Some of us have actual careers and families to manage. Not everyone can just put their life on hold. The accusation stung, because it implied my life was less important, less valuable, easier to pause, like my job didn't matter, like I didn't have my own dreams and plans. You know what, Marcus? Forget it. Do what you want. I'll take care of Mom. I hung up. It was the first time I'd ever really stood up to him, and it felt both liberating and terrifying. Over the next 2 months, Mom's condition worsened. Hospice got involved. A nurse would come 3 times a week to check on her, manage her pain medication, help with her care. Mom was in and out of consciousness more often. The cancer had spread to her bones, her brain. She was dying, and we all knew it. Marcus's visits became less frequent again. Once every 3 weeks, then once a month. He always had an excuse. Work was busy, the kids had activities, Vanessa wasn't feeling well. But I noticed he always called Mom on the phone. Long conversations where I could hear his voice through her bedroom door, smooth and soothing, making her laugh even through the pain. "Marcus called today," she'd tell me after these conversations, her eyes brighter. "He's doing so well. His company is sending him to a conference in Chicago. Isn't that wonderful?" "That's great, Mom," I'd say, and I'd mean it, even though part of me wanted to scream that I was the one who was actually here, actually taking care of her, actually sacrificing everything, while Marcus lived his life an hour away and called it in. 3 months before Mom died, something changed. Marcus showed up on a Tuesday afternoon, unannounced. I was in the kitchen preparing Mom's medications when he walked in. "We need to talk," he said, "about Mom's estate." "Not now, Marcus. She's sleeping." "Daniel, she's dying. We need to have this conversation." He sat down at the kitchen table, pulled out a folder. "I've been talking to an estate attorney. There are some serious tax implications we need to address. If we don't set up the estate properly, a huge chunk is going to taxes and probate fees." $700,000. I'd never really thought about it in those terms. To me, it was just Mom's house, Mom's accounts. The money wasn't real yet because she was still alive, but Marcus had already done the math, already calculated what he stood to gain or lose. "What are you proposing?" I asked carefully. "I've had the attorney draw up some documents, a trust that would protect the assets from taxation. It's all very standard. Mom just needs to sign them and everything will be protected. You and I still split it 50-50, but this way we both get more." He slid the papers across the table. I picked them up, started reading. The legal language was dense, complicated, but certain phrases jumped out. Transfer of assets to trust, Marcus Hayes as trustee, sole discretion over distributions. "You'd be the trustee?" I asked, looking up. "Someone has to be. I have more experience with financial management, and frankly, I have the time to handle the administrative work. You're focused on Mom's care, which is important. This would just make things easier for everyone." "And you'd have sole discretion over distributions?" Marcus sighed. "Daniel, the trust has to have a designated trustee with decision-making authority. That's how trusts work. But it's not like I'm going to screw you over. You're my brother. This is just a legal formality to protect the assets." Every instinct I had was screaming that something was wrong, that this was a trap. But I was exhausted. I'd been sleeping 4 hours a night for months, running on coffee and stress, watching my mother die slowly and painfully. I couldn't think clearly. And Marcus sounded so reasonable, so confident, like he actually knew what he was talking about. "I'll need to read through this more carefully, maybe have my own attorney look at it." "There's no time for that," Marcus said urgently. "Mom's cognitive function is declining. She's on strong pain medications. Pretty soon, she won't be legally competent to sign anything. If we wait too long, we lose the opportunity to protect these assets, and then we're both screwed." "I'll think about it," I said. Marcus stood up, frustrated. "Fine, think about it, but don't take too long. Every day we wait is a day closer to losing a huge chunk of Mom's estate to taxes." He left the documents on the table. After he was gone, I tried to read through them again, but the legal language was overwhelming, and I was too tired to process it. I told myself I'd look at it tomorrow when I was more alert, but tomorrow came and Mom had a bad day, and I forgot about the documents entirely. 2 weeks later, I was giving Mom her evening medications when she said, "Marcus was here earlier. He needed me to sign some papers." My blood ran cold. "What papers?" "Something about the house and finances. He said it was to protect things for you boys, that you had already agreed to it." "When was he here?"
I'd been gone for an hour, maybe 90 minutes. I left the room, pulled out my phone, called Marcus. "What did you do?" I demanded when he answered. "I don't know what you're talking about. You came here while I was gone. You had Mom sign those trust documents." "Daniel, we needed to get that done. She was having a good day. She was lucid. If we'd waited any longer." "I didn't agree to it. I told you I needed to review them." "You were dragging your feet. Someone had to make a decision. And guess what? It's done. The assets are protected. You should be thanking me." "I want to see exactly what she signed." "I'll send you copies. Relax, Daniel. This is good for both of us." But when I got the copies 2 days later and finally had time to have an attorney friend look at them, I realized just how badly I'd been screwed. The trust documents gave Marcus complete control over all of Mom's assets. He was the trustee with sole and absolute discretion over all distributions. And buried deep in the legal language was a clause that said the trustee could determine that distributions to beneficiaries should be unequal if the trustee deems such inequality to be in the best interest of preserving the trust assets. In other words, Marcus could give himself everything and give me nothing, and it would be perfectly legal. This is bad, my attorney friend told me. Your brother basically has complete control. Unless you can prove he coerced her or that she wasn't competent when she signed, this trust is legally binding. Can we challenge it? You can try, but trust litigation is expensive and difficult. You'd need to prove undue influence or lack of capacity, and even if you won, it could take years. Years. Mom didn't have years. She had weeks, maybe days. I confronted Marcus the next time he visited. You stole from me, I said quietly, standing in the driveway as he was leaving. You manipulated Mom into signing documents that give you control of everything. That's ridiculous, Marcus said, but he wouldn't meet my eyes. The trust protects both of us. It protects you. It gives you complete control. You can cut me out entirely if you want. Why would I do that? You're my brother. I don't know, Marcus. Why would you manipulate our dying mother into signing away her assets? Why would you lie to me about what those documents actually said? He got in his car. You're being paranoid. Maybe if you'd actually read the documents when I first showed them to you instead of dragging your feet, you'd understand what they really do. This is your own fault for not paying attention. He drove away. I stood there, shaking with rage and helplessness, knowing I'd been outmaneuvered and that there was nothing I could do about it in time to make a difference. Mom died 6 weeks later. It was a Tuesday morning in October. I was sitting next to her bed, holding her hand, when her breathing finally stopped. She went peacefully, which was all I could have asked for. I called Marcus. He didn't answer. I left a voicemail. Mom's gone. She passed about an hour ago. I'm at the house. He showed up 4 hours later with Vanessa. He cried, which surprised me. Whatever else Marcus was, he'd loved Mom in his own way. We made arrangements together for the funeral, which was civil, if not warm. Extended family came from out of state. The service was beautiful. Mom would have loved it. The day after the funeral, Marcus asked me to meet him at Mom's house. Our house, I suppose, though it didn't feel like ours yet. It still felt like hers. When I arrived, Marcus was already inside with Vanessa and a man I didn't recognize. Daniel, this was Richard Cross. He's the attorney who set up the trust. We need to go over some things. We sat in Mom's living room, the same living room where I had spent months caring for her, and Richard laid out the terms of the trust. Everything had been transferred into it. The house, valued at $410,000, Mom's life insurance, $200,000, her retirement accounts, $85,000, her savings and checking accounts, another $40,000. Total estate value, approximately $735,000. Per the terms of the trust, Richard explained, Marcus, as trustee, has discretion over how and when distributions are made to the beneficiaries. So when do Daniel and I get our shares? I asked. Richard glanced at Marcus, who cleared his throat. Well, that's what we need to discuss. The trust is designed to preserve the assets long-term. Making immediate distributions would defeat that purpose. The plan is to hold the assets in the trust, let them appreciate, and make distributions over time as appropriate. Over time? I repeated. How much time? That depends on various factors, Marcus said. Market conditions, tax implications, whether either of us has immediate financial needs. I have immediate financial needs. I took family leave for 6 months to care for Mom. I've been living off my savings. I need money to get back on my feet. Marcus nodded sympathetically. I understand, and we can work something out. Maybe a small distribution to help you with immediate expenses. But we need to be smart about this, Daniel. This is our inheritance, our mother's legacy. We can't just blow through it. Our inheritance. You mean my inheritance too, right? We're splitting this 50-50? Another glance between Marcus and Richard. Well, that's the other thing we need to discuss. The trust does specify equal beneficiaries, but there are provisions for unequal distributions based on contributions to Mom's care, financial need, and what's best for preserving the trust assets long-term. My heart started pounding. What are you saying? I'm saying that while we're both beneficiaries, the actual distribution amounts will be determined based on a number of factors. And given that I've been managing Mom's financial affairs, handling all the legal work, dealing with the estate planning, I was taking care of her. My voice rose. I was the one who was actually here every single day for months. You visited once a month. And that was very kind of you, Marcus said in that same condescending tone. But we're talking about financial management, legal expertise, the actual work of administering an estate. That has value too, Daniel. I stood up. You're stealing from me. You're actually stealing Mom's estate. I'm managing it as the trustee, which is my legal right and responsibility. We'll see about that, I said. I'm getting my own attorney. You can't afford an attorney, Marcus said quietly. You just told me you've been living off savings for 6 months. You have no money to fight me, Daniel. And even if you did, trust litigation takes years and costs tens of thousands of dollars. You'd bankrupt yourself fighting me, and you'd probably still lose. The trust is tight. I had the best estate attorneys in Boston draft it. He was right. I knew he was right. I had maybe $20,000 left in savings. I couldn't afford to fight him in court, and he'd planned it that way. He'd waited until I was at my most vulnerable, most exhausted, most financially drained, and then he'd made his move. You're really going to do this, I said quietly. You're going to steal everything Mom left and leave me with nothing?
I'm gonna manage our mother's estate responsibly, Marcus said. And when the time is right, you'll get your share. But I'm the trustee. I make those decisions, not you. I left before I did something I'd regret. Drove back to my apartment, which I'd barely seen in 6 months, and sat in the dark trying to process what had just happened. My brother had stolen my inheritance. He'd manipulated our dying mother, lied to me, and used his position as trustee to take everything. And there was nothing I could do about it. Or so I thought. The next few months were some of the darkest of my life. I went back to work at the accounting firm, but my heart wasn't in it. I felt hollow, betrayed, angry in a way I'd never experienced before. Marcus sent me a check for $5,000 with a note that said, "Initial distribution from the trust, more to come as appropriate." $5,000 out of $735,000, less than 1%. I saw a few attorneys about challenging the trust. Every single one told me the same thing. It was legal, it was enforceable, and proving undue influence or lack of capacity would be nearly impossible without concrete evidence. "Did your mother seem confused when she signed?" they'd ask. "Do you have any witnesses who can testify she didn't understand what she was signing?" I didn't. Marcus had made sure of that. He'd come when I was gone, when it was just him and Mom, and he'd gotten her to sign. Even if she'd been confused or medicated, I had no way to prove it. "Your best bet is to try to work something out with your brother," one attorney told me. "See if he'll agree to a reasonable distribution outside of court. Sometimes family mediators can help with these situations." But I knew Marcus. There would be no working it out. He'd won, and he knew it, and he was going to hold on to that victory with everything he had. Over the next year, he sent me 3 more checks, $2,000, $3,000, another $2,000. Pittance amounts, barely enough to survive on, and always with that same note, distribution from the trust. Never an accounting of the trust assets, never any explanation of how he was managing the money, just those tiny checks that felt more like insults than payments. I found out through a mutual cousin that Marcus and Vanessa had bought a new house, a 5-bedroom colonial in an expensive Boston suburb, $500,000. When I confronted him about it, he said he'd gotten a raise at work, that it had nothing to do with the trust, but I knew he was using Mom's money to fund his lifestyle while giving me scraps. I became obsessed with finding a way to prove he'd defrauded me. I went back through every interaction, every conversation, looking for something I could use. I requested copies of all the trust documents from Richard Cross's office. I studied them line by line, looking for loopholes or mistakes. I learned more about trust law than I'd ever wanted to know. And slowly, gradually, I started to see something. The trust documents Marcus had gotten Mom to sign were dated March 15th, but I remembered something. On March 15th, Mom had been heavily medicated. She'd had a particularly bad day pain-wise, and the hospice nurse had increased her morphine dosage. I'd written it in the journal I'd been keeping to track her symptoms and medications, a journal I still had. March 15th, bad pain day. Hospice nurse increased morphine to 15 milligrams every 4 hours. Mom very drowsy and confused. Didn't recognize me for about 20 minutes this afternoon. Asked where Dad was. Dad died 11 years ago. If Mom had been that confused, that heavily medicated, there was no way she had the mental capacity to understand complex trust documents. This was it. This was my evidence. I took the journal to a new attorney, a woman named Lisa Brennan, who specialized in elder law and estate litigation. She read through my notes, looked at the medical records I'd requested from hospice, and finally looked up at me. "This is good," she said. "This shows she was heavily medicated and cognitively impaired on the day she signed. If we can prove she didn't have capacity at the time of signing, the trust could be invalidated." "Can we prove it?" "We'd need the hospice records showing her medication levels. We'd need medical expert testimony about how those medications affect cognitive function. And we'd need to show that your brother knew or should have known she wasn't competent to sign. It's not a slam dunk, but it's a case we can make." "How much will it cost?" $30,000 for the retainer, probably another $20,000 to $30,000 through trial if it gets that far, maybe more. I didn't have that kind of money, but I knew someone who might help me. I called my uncle, my mother's brother, Thomas, who lived in Florida. I explained everything, the trust, Marcus's manipulation, the evidence I'd found. Uncle Thomas had always been close to Mom, and he'd never particularly liked Marcus. That son of a bitch, he stole from my sister on her deathbed. I can prove it, but I need money for legal fees. I'm asking for a loan, Uncle Thomas, $30,000. I'll pay you back from my share of the inheritance when we win. There was a long pause. Then, you'll have it by the end of the week. Go after him, Daniel. Your mother would want you to fight. With Uncle Thomas's loan, I hired Lisa, and we filed suit to invalidate the trust and challenge Marcus's role as trustee. The lawsuit alleged lack of capacity, undue influence, and breach of fiduciary duty. We demanded a full accounting of all trust assets and requested that Marcus be removed as trustee. Marcus's response was swift and vicious. His attorney filed a motion to dismiss, calling my claims baseless and malicious. They argued that I was a disgruntled beneficiary trying to interfere with proper trust administration. They claimed Mom was fully competent when she signed, and that I was lying about her condition. The judge denied the motion to dismiss and ordered the case to proceed to discovery. That's when things got interesting, because discovery meant Marcus had to turn over documents, bank statements, investment records, a full accounting of how he'd been managing the trust for the past year. What we found was even worse than I had imagined. Marcus had transferred $200,000 from the trust to his personal accounts. The explanation in the records was trustee fees for management and administration, $200,000 in fees for a year of basically doing nothing. He'd also taken out a loan against the house, Mom's house, for $100,000. That money had been used as a down payment on his new house. But here's where he'd really screwed up. Among the documents was an email from Marcus to Richard Cross, the estate attorney, dated 2 days before Mom signed. Subject line, tomorrow's meeting. The email said, just confirming you'll be at the house at 2 p.m. tomorrow. I'll make sure Daniel's out running errands. Mom's having a low pain day, but she's on enough medication that she's pretty agreeable. Shouldn't be any problems getting the signatures. Pretty agreeable. He'd deliberately chosen a day when Mom was medicated enough to be compliant, but not so out of it that it would be obvious she wasn't competent. And he'd made sure I wasn't there. He'd planned the whole thing. This is smoking gun territory, Lisa told me when she saw the email. This shows premeditation. This shows he knew she was impaired, and he took advantage of it anyway. We've got him. We filed an amended complaint, including the email and the evidence of financial self-dealing. Marcus's attorney tried to explain it away. The email was taken out of context, the fees were reasonable, the loan against the house was legitimate trust business, but it didn't matter. The evidence was damning. The case went to trial 2 years after Mom's death. Those 2 years were hellish. Marcus and I hadn't spoken since the lawsuit was filed. Family gatherings were awkward disasters, with half the family supporting me and half supporting Marcus. The legal fees climbed higher, despite Lisa's best efforts to keep them reasonable. I'd borrowed more money from Uncle Thomas, taken out a personal loan, maxed out my credit cards. I was all in. The trial lasted 3 days. The hospice nurse testified about Mom's condition on March 15th. She was on a significant dose of morphine, the nurse said. Patients at that medication level are often confused, disoriented. I wouldn't expect someone in that state to be able to understand complex legal documents. We played the email, watched Marcus's face as the judge read it aloud. I'll make sure Daniel is out running errands. Mom's on enough medication that she's pretty agreeable. Marcus took the stand to defend himself. He claimed the email wasn't about manipulating Mom, just about timing the meeting for when she was feeling well enough to handle paperwork. He claimed the trustee fees were standard industry rates for estate management. He claimed everything he'd done was proper and legal. But on cross-examination, Lisa tore him apart. Mr. Hayes, you testified that you took $200,000 in trustee fees. Can you tell the court what specific services you provided to earn those fees? I managed the trust assets, handled the paperwork, made financial decisions. Can you provide documentation of these services, time logs, records of financial decisions made? I didn't keep detailed time logs, but So you took $200,000 without documenting what work you actually did. It was a lot of work. More work than your brother did, spending 6 months caring for your dying mother 24 hours a day? Marcus had no answer for that. The judge took 2 weeks to issue a ruling. When it came, it was everything I'd hoped for. The trust was invalidated due to lack of capacity and undue influence. Marcus was removed as trustee and ordered to return all funds he'd taken, including the $200,000 in fees and the $100,000 loan. The estate would be divided equally between Marcus and me as per Mom's original will, and Marcus was ordered to pay my legal fees as a penalty for his misconduct. Total vindication, complete victory. But it didn't feel like victory, not really, because Mom was still gone. because my relationship with my brother was destroyed beyond repair, because I'd spent 2 years of my life, tens of thousands of dollars, and countless hours of stress fighting for something that should have been mine by right. The estate was finally settled 3 months later. After paying off the loans Marcus had taken, after covering legal fees and estate taxes, my share came to $320,000, less than half of what the original estate had been worth, but infinitely more than the scraps Marcus had been giving me. I paid back Uncle Thomas immediately, with interest. I paid off my credit cards and personal loans, and then I did something I'd been dreaming about for 2 years. I bought a house. Not in Riverside Springs, where every street reminded me of Mom, where I might run into Marcus at the grocery store. I moved 2 hours north to Portland, Maine. Fresh start, new city, a place where I could finally breathe. Marcus tried to call me once after the settlement. I let it go to voicemail. "Daniel, we need to talk. I know you're angry, but we're still brothers. We're still family. Mom wouldn't want us to be like this." I deleted the message without finishing it. Because here's what Marcus didn't understand. We stopped being family the moment he chose to betray me, the moment he manipulated our dying mother for financial gain, the moment he looked me in the eye and lied. Blood doesn't make you family. Trust makes you family. Loyalty makes you family. And Marcus had destroyed both. I heard through relatives that Marcus and Vanessa were struggling financially. Having to pay back all that money plus my legal fees had wiped them out. They'd had to sell the new house, downsize to a smaller place. Marcus's marriage was strained. Apparently, Vanessa hadn't known the full extent of what he'd done, and when it all came out in court, she'd been horrified. They were in counseling, trying to salvage things. I felt no sympathy. He made his choices. Now he was living with the consequences. What I didn't expect was the call I got 3 years after the settlement. I was 34 years old, had been living in Portland for nearly a year, had started dating someone, had begun to build a life that didn't revolve around grief and betrayal. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Daniel?" The voice was small, young. "It's Emily." Emily? Marcus's daughter. My niece. She'd been 7 years old the last time I'd seen her at Mom's funeral. She'd be 10 now. "Emily? How did you get this number?" "I found it in Dad's phone. He doesn't know I'm calling. Daniel, I need help." My chest tightened. "What kind of help? Are you okay? Are you safe?" "I'm okay, but Dad and Mom are fighting all the time about money and about you and about what happened with Grandma. And Dad's been acting weird. He's been going through Grandma's old papers, like old photo albums and stuff from when you guys were kids. He cries sometimes when he looks at them. Mom says he's depressed." I closed my eyes. Part of me wanted to say that wasn't my problem, that Marcus had made his bed. But Emily was just a kid. None of this was her fault. "Emily, I'm sorry you're going through that, but I don't know what I can do to help. Can you just talk to him, please? He won't admit it, but I think he misses you. And I miss you, too. You're my uncle. I barely remember you, but I remember you were nice to me at Grandma's funeral. And now we never see you, and it's like you disappeared, and I just want my family back." The words hit me harder than I expected. "Emily, but your dad did something bad. I'm not stupid. I've heard Mom and Dad arguing about it, about the money and the trust and the lawsuit. But he's still my dad, and you're still my uncle, and I know Grandma would be sad that you guys don't talk anymore." She was right. Mom would have hated this. She loved both of us, flawed as that love had been. She never wanted us to be enemies. "I'll think about it," I said finally. "But Emily, I can't promise anything. Your dad did something that really hurt me badly. It's not something I can just forget." "I know, but maybe you could try? For Grandma?" After we hung up, I sat with my phone in my hand for a long time, thinking about family, about forgiveness, about whether some betrayals are too big to come back from. I didn't call Marcus, not that day, not that week, but Emily's call had planted something in my mind, a question I couldn't quite shake. What would Mom actually want?
The answer came from an unexpected source. I was going through some boxes I'd kept from Mom's house, things I'd been too grief-stricken to sort through before. Photo albums, old letters, her jewelry box. And at the bottom of one box, I found a sealed envelope with my name on it in Mom's handwriting. My hand shook as I opened it. Inside was a letter dated 2 weeks before she died, before Marcus had gotten her to sign the trust, before everything had fallen apart. "My dearest Daniel," it began. "I'm writing this on a day when my mind is clear, and I want to make sure you know some things, in case I don't get another chance to say them. You have been my rock these past months, the son who stayed, who cared, who sacrificed so much for me. I see it, even when I don't say it. I've always seen you, even when I didn't show it the way I should have.
I know I favored Marcus when you were growing up. I know I gave him attention and praise that you deserved just as much. It wasn't because I loved you less. It was because he needed it more. He was always so insecure underneath all that confidence, always needing validation. And you were always so self-sufficient, so steady. I took that for granted. I took you for granted, and I'm sorry for that. I need you to know that my will leaves everything equally between you and Marcus. That's what I want. That's what's fair. If Marcus tries to change that or manipulate things after I'm gone, don't let him. You deserve your inheritance. You've earned it 1,000 times over. But I also need you to know this. He's still your brother. Whatever happens, whatever he does, he's still your family. Don't let money or property destroy the relationship you have. Don't let my death turn you into enemies. Life is too short, and family is too precious. Promise me you'll try to forgive, even when it's hard. Promise me you'll remember that you're brothers before you're anything else. I love you, Daniel, more than I ever told you, more than you'll probably ever know. Thank you for being exactly who you are, Mom. I read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down my face. She'd known. Somehow she'd known Marcus might try something, and she'd written this letter to guide me through it, to give me permission to fight for what was mine, but also to remind me not to lose myself in the fight. I'd won the legal battle. I'd gotten my inheritance. I'd proven Marcus had wronged me. But in doing so, I'd lost my only sibling. I'd cut myself off from my niece and nephew. I'd let the betrayal consume me so completely that I'd forgotten the last thing Mom had asked me to do. Forgive. Remember we were brothers. The question was, could I? After everything he'd done, everything he'd stolen, all the lies he'd told, could I actually forgive Marcus? I sat with that question for weeks, and slowly I realized that forgiveness didn't mean forgetting. It didn't mean pretending what happened was okay. It meant choosing not to let the betrayal define me anymore, choosing to let go of the anger that had been eating me alive for years. I called Marcus on a Sunday afternoon. He answered on the 3rd ring, and there was a long pause when he heard my voice. Daniel? Yeah, it's me. Another pause. Emily said she called you. I didn't know until I saw it on the phone bill. I'm sorry about that. I told her not to bother you. She didn't bother me. Marcus, we need to talk. Okay. His voice was cautious, uncertain. What you did was unforgivable. You manipulated Mom, you stole from me, you lied and schemed and betrayed everything family is supposed to mean. I will never forget that. I will never fully trust you again. I know I screwed up, Daniel. I've replayed it in my head 1,000 times. I was greedy and selfish, and I convinced myself I was just being practical, but I knew what I was doing was wrong. I knew it, and I did it anyway. It was the first time he'd actually admitted it, the first time he'd owned what he'd done without excuses or justifications. Why? I asked. Why did you do it? He was quiet for a long moment. Because I was jealous, he finally said. My whole life, I was the one who was successful, the one with the career and the family and the money. But when Mom got sick, none of that mattered. You were the one who was there. You were the one she needed. You were the one who actually showed up. And it made me realize that I'd been a terrible son, that I'd coasted on being the favorite without actually earning it. And instead of dealing with that guilt, instead of trying to be better, I decided to take from you, to make sure that even if you were the better son, I'd still come out ahead financially. It was pathetic and cruel, and I hate myself for it. I'd waited years to hear him say something like that, to hear actual remorse instead of justifications. It didn't fix anything, didn't undo the damage, but it was something. Mom left me a letter. She wrote it before she died. She told me no matter what happened, you were still my brother, that I should try to forgive you. She was a better person than I am, Marcus said, his voice breaking, than either of us probably. Yeah, she was. I took a breath. I don't know if we can ever be close again, Marcus. I don't know if I can ever fully forgive what you did, but I'm tired of being angry. I'm tired of letting this define my life, so I'm willing to try. Not for you, for Emily and Lucas, for Mom, and maybe for myself. I'll take whatever you're willing to give. I don't deserve a second chance, but if you're offering one, I won't waste it. I swear to you, Daniel, I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make this right. You can't make it right, I said. Some things can't be fixed, but you can be honest, you can be present, you can actually be a brother instead of whatever you were before. I will, I promise. We didn't talk long that day. It was too raw, too complicated, but it was a start, a small crack in the wall I'd built between us. Over the next year, we started slowly rebuilding something. Not the relationship we had before, that was dead and gone, but something new, something more honest, built on clear boundaries and low expectations. Marcus came to Portland twice to have dinner with me.
I went to his house once to see Emily and Lucas, who barely remembered me but were curious about their uncle who had disappeared. Vanessa was civil but cool. She'd stayed with Marcus, but she clearly hadn't forgiven him for what he'd put the family through. The expensive house was gone. The easy money was gone. They were living a more modest life, and I could see the strain in Marcus's face, the weight of consequences he was still carrying. "I'm in therapy," he told me during one visit, "trying to figure out why I did what I did, why I've always needed to win, to be the best, to come out on top. It's helped. I'm not fixed, but I'm better than I was." "Good. Keep going." Did I ever fully forgive Marcus? I don't know. Forgiveness is complicated. Some days I thought I had. Other days I'd remember what he'd done and the anger would flare up again. But I learned to live with it, learned to accept that my brother was flawed and selfish and capable of terrible things, but also that he was still my brother, still the person I'd grown up with, who knew Mom, who shared my history. The last time I saw Marcus was 6 months ago, at Emily's 13th birthday party. We stood in his backyard watching her blow out candles, and for a moment I saw something in Marcus's face: sadness, regret, the weight of all the years we'd lost. "I'm sorry," he said quietly, "for all of it. I know I've said it before, but I need you to know I mean it. I know you do, and I meant it. We weren't close, we probably never would be again, but we were brothers, and sometimes that had to be enough." So, that's my story. 4 years of fighting to reclaim what was stolen from me. 4 years of legal battles, financial strain, and watching my family tear itself apart over money and pride. My brother manipulated my dying mother, forged documents to steal my inheritance, and thought he'd gotten away with it. He was wrong. I proved it in court, got my money back, and watched him lose everything. But the real battle wasn't in the courtroom. It was deciding whether revenge was more important than family, whether winning was worth losing my only sibling. I made my choice. I'm still not sure if it was the right one. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever had to choose between justice and family, if you've ever been betrayed by someone you loved, hit that like button right now. Subscribe and turn on notifications for more real stories about family drama, betrayal, and the complicated road to forgiveness. Drop a comment and tell me, would you have forgiven your sibling after something like this, or would you have cut them off forever? I read every comment. Thanks for watching, and remember, family is complicated, but the truth always matters. Always.